Hi, Geo students. This is part 2, and Ms. KG is going to go over centripetal and centrifugal forces. We're going to fill out the second page chart of the binding and breaking forces. And before we fill out that chart, I want you to notice these cool little diagrams. I want you to draw these at the top. This is centripetal forces. They're unifying forces. So have your arrows, draw your arrows coming in towards the middle. Centripetal means coming towards the middle. And so what are these forces in a country? They're the good stuff. They're the ones where everybody comes together and unifies, like right around the winter holidays. There's a lot of peace and love and people taking care of each other. And we also really love celebrating like the 4th of July, where we all come together and we blow stuff up. And so the centripetal forces are like everybody coming together to watch the Super Bowl, or everybody speaking the same language. They unify. Divisive forces, though, please draw your arrows going away from the center. Centrifugal forces are the ones that create conflict, like politics. My goodness, in November when we have the election, people are going to be arguing over politics. Or religion can be a centrifugal force. Whether or not you're of our nationality, there's a lot of crisis right now around our border and who's allowed into our country legally. And so that would be a centrifugal force. So we're going to fill out a chart together, and you've drawn your little diagrams. Centripetal forces help bind a nation together. Centrifugal forces break us apart. So examples of good stuff: culture and traditions, cultural values, and geography. So traditions like customs and holidays and religion, where we all come together, that helps have cohesion in a society. If everyone is of the same politics, like if everybody's following democracy, or in the Soviet Union, everybody has a communist mindset, that actually is cohesive and binds people together. Maybe you have family ties, and that's shapes behavior because you don't want to get out of line because you have so many family members who you would bring shame to that family if you were being a hoodlum. And then geography. If your country is fairly small and people are fairly homogeneous, similar in culture, you may have a lot of centripetal forces going on in your country. But I'm going to go through the ones that break apart. Whoa. Minorities. If you've got different people treated differently in your country, like in our country, we have brown people that don't have the same economic power as white people historically, or you have religious groups that have power over others, or political parties that have powers over others, that can create tension, that can create centrifugal forces. If your country just physically is isolated, you have islands or mountains and people are isolated and don't get communication from the government, that could create factions against the larger federal government. If you just have a super huge country that's really hard to manage, that can create centrifugal forces. And other examples are socioeconomic differences, dissimilar cultures, or maybe economic philosophy that you have just different. People believe that money should be spent in different ways. So would you please copy down this chart, because this is going to serve as a nice reference when you make your own for your UN country political project. So copy this down for a second, okay? And then I'm going to click out and I'm going to show you what we're going to do with this information. So this worksheet that we've been filling out over both lectures, you are going to upload to Mr. DiCarlo or to Ms. Kurganin so that you can get credit for your notes. And then I'm going to get out of this. I wish I could show you, I might as well show you here all the different ethnic groups here in Southwest Asia, how difficult that would be to have centripetal forces and have cohesion when everyone is different. But I need to get out of this because you've got some work to do. We are going to go into Schoology, and this is an assignment that is called the UN internal and external forces. And so if you read through the directions, it asks you to first make a chart, and you are going to be thinking about, for your UN country, what are 5 centrifugal forces and 5 centripetal forces. You need 5 in each column. And then you're also going to define and explain at least 3 of them in detail. And I'll show you an example that Mr. DiCarlo made to show what, about how long do you need to write about those forces. So where are you going to get the centripetal information? When you studied the culture of your country, you already looked up on Culturegram a lot about the holidays, the language, the religion, the interests that bind that country together. So that could create your list of the positive. For the negative, you are going to have to summarize things that are problematic in your country. And it could be tensions along the borders, or it could be problems with economics, or it could be even some environmental issues. And it may involve some research. So I'm going to show you places where you can go to find that information. Now, your chart, your finished chart, is going to look like this. And Mr. DiCarlo suggests that you make it on a Google slide so that you can create a T-chart. And here he does an example for Venezuela. So what are some forces that bind Venezuela together? He writes about baseball and how baseball is their national pastime. They love baseball. They have really good baseball players that come out of Venezuela. That religion is a significant binding factor in their country. They're mostly Catholic, 71% of them. And so they follow holidays that match the Catholic calendar. And 95% of them speak Spanish. So that's another unifying force. They also believe strongly in family, extended family. And then he has one more down here that it's out of view. Now, but what is problematic in Venezuela? What is ripping the country apart? Well, they've had some food shortages. They've had some problems with their leader, who has been, for really lack of a better word, he's been a dictator there, and he's really been mismanaging the money, and he's leaving people very poor. The indigenous Amazonian people are really having to fight for their territory because they are increasingly being encroached upon by miners and people who are cutting down the forest. So they're in conflict with the ranchers. They have large socioeconomic differences. They are wanting to be capitalistic, but then they have these totalitarian leaders who are running their country like a dictatorship. So they're having a hard time with public control of the oil companies. And then just the political values, this movement towards the dictatorship is really frustrating to people and their rights. So how are you going to get this information? Let me show you some sites that we've prepared where you could research what are the problems in your country. Now, I like this metacosm disputed territory. When I try and use it in class, it crashes because everybody's on it at the same time, and then it doesn't load. But you could click into a country and it could tell you hot spots. Like here in Venezuela are some hot spots. The Bird Island, the west of Essequibo River. If I click into that, I'm like, I want to know about that. It'll tell me down here a maritime boundary is a sea boundary. And so there's a lot of countries that are arguing over who gets the right of the resources in the sea. So they're frustrated with Guyana over that sea boundary. So that's one of their problems. So this Metacosm site is a place to look at disputed boundary territory. But if that one's not doing it for you, I really just like going into the CIA transnational issues. So we've used this World Factbook a lot for our projects, and since it's made by the CIA, of course they would be keeping track of problems. That's what the CIA does. They spy on other countries. So if I wanted to know what problems are going on in Venezuela that the CIA is checking up on, I'm going to scroll down to Venezuela, and at the very last one here, transnational issues means what are the issues going on in Venezuela with other countries. And I can start to skim read through here. They've got some disputes with other countries around their borders. They've got problems with refugees and people being displaced. And oh goodness, they've got some trafficking going on. It looks like, oh, horrible. They are trafficking people. They're selling people as slaves. They are also dealing in illicit drugs. Horrible. But yes, those are some of the problems or the negative centrifugal forces going on in Venezuela. There's a couple other places that I can go, but these then become a little more difficult for research. So deep breath. I mean, of course, you could just go into the internet and type in what are the problems in my country. But this is a college site, and it is the Durham Boundary News website. And you could type in your country here for boundary news, and I want to search Venezuela just because I want to keep the theme going. And it's going to give me, and I know this is going to be overwhelming, but it's going to give me thousands of topics around Venezuela, and this college website keeps track of every single boundary dispute in every country. Well, it's written for college level readers, so I may like click into some of these and I'm like, oh, I don't know, big words. I don't know what this is. Oh, yeah, okay. That one was the one I just had clicked into, that there's disputed waters or a maritime boundary dispute. But I could come down a little bit further and I could see what else is going on. Oh, there's a humanitarian crisis. I could click into that. Trinidad and Tobago, it looks like they're in some type of agreement with Venezuela, and I would have to click into this article to see what is that problem. Oh, gas, that's right, because there's so much oil coming out of Venezuela. So if you are a strong reader and you're needing to find a few more problems for your country, you could go into this boundary news. And if you need some help, come into our online conferences that we have on block day, and we could maybe try and help you find a few more problems for your country. So once you've got your T-chart, once you have your 5 centripetal forces and your 5 centrifugal forces, and you've got those slides done, now you're ready to make your map. And the map is going to be an illustration of where are those problems in your country. You're going to need 4 problems, and you're going to highlight and show where those problems are. And to make this map, again, you're going to start with an outline map. So you're going to go online and find an outline map of your country, because then you're going to illustrate around that. So you're going to cut and paste an outline map. Blob. Get a blob. Then around that map, oh, and don't forget, if you could please tell us, oh, I don't know. Yeah, actually, Mr. DiCarlo, we're not going to bother with state shapes, so let's not worry about that. Okay, so don't worry about the state shapes. You are going to cover around this map, what's the problem, who is it with, what's it over. You have to summarize it in a couple sentences, and then you need to categorize it. Is it going on right now, or was it going on a couple years ago? Please don't give us problems that were going on like 50 years ago. Like, we're looking for current news. And then you're going to illustrate. So a finished product would look like this. Here's Belarus. Belarus, one of the problems is they have a problem with Russia over their oil fields. And where? Mostly like right here in the northeastern region of Belarus. There are a number of oil fields, and they've had conflict with Russia because Russia has been trying to control those oil fields. And then the categorization is this historic. It's going on. And Mr. DiCarlo and I want you to find a little clip art or a little illustration. Since it's a problem over oil, we have an oil rig here. If it was a problem over drugs, you would have a picture of some drugs. And you are going to, for this assignment, have 4 problems illustrated around your country or in your country. Maybe one of